Hello!
Hello!
Welcome back to Project Mosquito.
In this week's episode we're going to continue with our brake lines.
It looks like a car and it feels car-shaped.
You cut out. I'm not sure it's going to work.
I am. Have faith, Father.
Flipping it. Well, it's 3 mil thick, isn't it?
Yeah.
Last week we had a comment about why we never lose our cool when we're working, right? And why we never like throw tools or lose our composure,
Yeah.
right? And it was suggested that we don't do that because of editing. We don't do that because we've both worked in those kinds of environments before, and it's not productive.
No, because you end up making a mess, making a bigger mess than you were just because you've lost your egg, and
It's
it does no good.
to work with somebody like that as well, isn't it?
Yep.
It's not a nice work environment to be in, and it's not productive as somebody who's losing the rag. And so anytime we get to that point, we stop and we have a conversation. And that's not to say that we always agree on everything, and it's not to say that we don't disagree. In fact, we disagree reasonably often, and I think it's healthy because we're both trying to achieve the same goal, but we might have two very different ways of going about it. And so when we do, we stop what we're doing, we have a conversation, we weigh up our options, we out an ego, and we come up with the best solution.
Yeah, between us.
Yeah, and the one thing that annoys us is when we're under each other's feet, which is why often we don't do two jobs in one episode, and if we do two completely different jobs where we're not kind of on top of each other.
Yeah, because it is such a tiny car, two people can't occupy the same space.
Yeah, but that causes friction, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But a lot of it is, I know that Dad's really good at what he does, and Dad knows that I'm good at what I do. And so we have a lot of faith in each other, and we have a lot of trust in each other, and we just kind of, like I said, we're working to achieve the same goal. And we're not in some massive time crunch either, are we?
No, it's not just that. I'm not in competition either.
No, definitely not.
There's no way that either of us need to prove that we're better than the other.
Well, we're not. Definitely not. When I was a kid, I was really jealous of my dad. And I felt like I had to be you and I had to become you and be as good as you. Then I realised that actually I'll never be as good as my dad, what my dad is good at, because you've got a gift, right? And we're just very different people. But then I realised over time, and I touched on this, I posted a thing on Father's Day on social media, but then I realised that I'd become different at things that you're not good at.
Yeah, things I have no interest in.
Like communication.
Yeah, things I have absolutely no interest in. I tend not to bother with.
No, it's not just that, but you're not naturally like superb at design, say. You tend to make things functional and not very aesthetically pleasing. Yeah?
Yeah, make things that work.
Because you are function first, yeah?
Yeah.
Whereas I learnt function from you, and then I'm like, well, here's how we can do something that's both functional and aesthetically pleasing. And I'm good at thinking of the things that nobody's thought of, which is why, like, I came up with most of the solutions for how we're running the brake lines and stuff like that. But Dad stops it being something that we can't make and something that's not functional. And so we complement each other rather than clash with each other all the time. And so, yeah, there are times when we get annoyed at each other, but then we just stop everything and talk it out because...
Yeah, because it gets you,
It gets you nowhere.
Gets you nowhere.
Yeah. And it's horrible to work in a toxic environment where people are shouting and throwing tools, and it's just not nice. It's like working tired. Like, nothing good's gonna come of working tired, and nothing's gonna come of work like throwing tools and being a bit of an arse. Really?
Have you seen the other fitting, Oliver?
What are the fitting?
The screw-on fitting.
Yeah, it's in here.
Don't.
I think it also helps that we've worked together for a lot of years. Obviously, we know each other very well, but we know each other's both like positives and negatives. So if I'm having a tough time of it, Dad can tell before tell me I'm looking at me, and vice versa. If Dad's having a rough day, I know about it straight away. And you make allowances for each other, don't you?
Of course you do.
Bit of compassion and a bit of thought and a bit of consideration. It goes a real long way.
Yeah, and it's not just that. If things aren't going right, it's normally your own fault. So it is. If you're struggling to get a part fitting on a thing, it's because you're not doing it right. So what are you going to do? Throw yourself across the room? No, you don't do that. You just have a minute, look at it, and think, hang on a minute, what am I doing wrong?
Or like, if one of us has forgotten to put certain pulling fittings on a list or whatever, there's no point me having to go at Dad for it, because tomorrow it could be me. Don't snap the tap in the hole, don't snap the tap.
We'll be right at that, I think.
I remember when you and I first started doing stuff together, you used to just say to me, Oliver, don't do that, right? And I'd be like, and it's still silly like apprentice stuff, right? But you'd go, Oliver, don't do that. And they used to go, why? And Dad used to go, because I've told you not to. Right, that was the reason. And then over time you learned to tell me why in the life experience you had, that led you to learning not to do that dumb thing, right?
So,
which is a lovely thing, because I'm like, so you were once dumb, and therefore you, there's
nobody's born knowing how to do everything.
Yeah. What's it, Baldwin, the writer? He once said, is it James Baldwin? I can't remember. He once said, when I was young, I knew everything. But now I'm old and I know nothing.
Well, at least you know that you know nothing.
Yes. That's it. A bit of humility goes a long way, doesn't it?
This runs underneath. Goes from there. That runs underneath. That's fastened to there. But what I'm doing is just putting a radius on this edge. It doesn't actually touch. It's physically impossible for it to touch. But because the pedal box moves backwards and forwards, and this is in a fixed position, I'm just putting a rad on there so it can never chafe on the hose. So it's dead simple. It takes a few minutes, and just put a nice radius on, and it can never, and it's aluminium, so it can never ever chafe on the hose. And it's a tiny thing, but it just makes everything that little bit more reliable.
One of the things my dad taught me, in fact, right, shouting, throwing tools and stuff comes from insecurity in what you're doing, right? You feel like a failure, you feel like you're failing, you feel frustrated, and therefore you throw stuff. One of the things that Dad taught me, one of the first ever things that Dad taught me, is, and it was actually mountain biking. But when you're watching mountain biking, when you're watching someone doing downhill racing or whatever, they crash long before they crash, right? They make a bad decision, something happens, and then they go, overcorrect, 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 and down. They usually crash about 3 corners before they hit the ground. Same with MotoGP, same with rallying, all sorts. In fact, your pet peeve, people who hit the brakes rather than just rolling around the corner.
Yeah.
If you get off everything and you just roll around the corner, you don't slam on the brakes, lock up, and then go straight. But Dad taught me that if you go into stuff thinking that you're going to fail and you go into stuff with insecurity, then the product of what you create will be insecurity. And you actually have to go into stuff with the mindset that what you're going to make is beautiful. Whereas if you go into the mindset of, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't think it'll be very good, then what you make won't be very good and you won't know what you're doing.
In fact, your prophecy will come true.
Yeah, because you're going into stuff with the wrong mindset. Oh, that took long enough. Yeah, there's that famous Fellini quote, isn't there, about doing things with childish enthusiasm. Yeah?
Yeah, never lose your childish enthusiasm.
Yeah, because kids are perfectly fine. Like you watch like a little teeny tiny kid like learning to ride a bike, and they are perfectly content to suck at something for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours until they don't suck. Yeah, that's how most of us learn to ride a bike, isn't it?
Yep.
And that's what I think a lot of adults, you do something, you try something, you suck at it, you get frustrated at it, you throw your tools, and that's kind of the opposite of childish enthusiasm, isn't it? Because it's easy to forget that it's all supposed to be fun. Started with my fingers. You got Allen key?
It's whether this will kink before this does.
Yeah.
Alright, let's have a look. No, still not right. So the problem we've had is this angle, obviously it's not 90 degrees, but our fittings are. But we need the inside of this fitting to be parallel with this, and then we can put our hydraulic hose on, we can bolt it on, and it's flush to this, so there's no way that our feet can ever touch it. So even when the brake's fully compressed, there's no way we can actually,
dangling.
there's no way we can touch the line with our feet, or it gets rubbed or chafed or anything. But the problem we then have is we've got this angle right, but the angle here is now wrong. So what we're going to have to do is cut a piece out and inset the hose and the hose fitting into the bulkhead, which is no bad thing because it makes it really, really flush fitting, and so it won't get caught or bumped or anything. But at the moment, we can't get the hose on.
Right, let's make a V-shape piece. That's 2 folds in, yeah? Let's move this fit in. Where's the 11mm spanner? And let's point this fit in inwards slightly, downwards, sorry, towards the steering column. Like that. And then let's make our V-shaped panel that goes here to here. We're going to bend this down then. Yeah? So not quite to there. To there. Bend this down from this bead roll because that's a super stiff bit.
Well, why do you
just put sides on it?
Why do you have to turn that?
Because then it runs along here. You can have it straight if you want, but by bringing it in slightly, it means that the V doesn't run over here and catch the boot of your foot. The boot of your foot, or the toe of your boot, shoe, whatever. Because it's in line then with this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What's this hole for? That's not for windscreen wiper, is it?
Yes.
Right, get with it.
And all of a sudden everything gets even more complicated.
Yep. We didn't think of that. That's what we're doing though. It's a game of thinking of all the things we haven't thought of yet. Yeah. You got to be able to fit that in. Put that in your fitting up, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I reused an old template making this template. The half circle cut out at the top, just ignore that. It was just the smallest piece of card we had. I didn't measure anything, I didn't anything. I just did it by eye, so. It's less of a template and more of a suggestion.
That's better.
I think we need to put our point fitting on, and I think we need to look at how much for drop we need and how much room we actually need. So it's going to live over here, yeah?
Yep.
So we don't want something like that, yeah? I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, and our Slicks tier get a shout out mid-video. So Alex Bottomley, Andy Wood, David Flaherty, Doug Shott, Joe Shripley, Mike Satke, Rob Podmore, Robert Millwood, Steve Striefer and Tim Ritchie. That list seems to grow every single week, and I'm massively thankful to every single one of you for helping us to build this car.
Yes,
and
thank you guys.
make these videos. So if you would like to help make these videos, you can head over to patreon.com/oliverpickard, for which you will receive a shout out mid-video if you want to be a slick, 4 extra videos a month, and photos of what's going on in the workshop so that you'll know what's happening before anyone else. So once again, patreon.com/oliverpickard, and a massive thank you to every single one of you. I don't know how you're managing to be in trousers.
It's literally 38 degrees outside.
In the shade.
Oh, we're nothing different really, because we've been in here at -12.
Yeah.
So that's centigrade.
Flipping cold in Fahrenheit. Colder than you want it to be. Good morning.
Good morning.
While we've been, well, overnight, we've got a new slick tier Patreon, so let's say a thank you to Old Goat, which excellent beer as well. And I also need to say a big thank you to Alex Bottomley, who is one of our slick tier Patrons, but also reached out to me when I've been suffering with my allergies and told me that he's a member of the Nasalees family who make nose sprays. And he sent me some nose sprays that are not like normal nose sprays, and they've really helped. So I'll leave a link to those down below if you are an allergy sufferer and you want to have a look. And a huge thank you to Alex, because he's actually helped to bring you these videos over the last couple of weeks. It really, really helped, so thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex.
And Old Goat.
And I'll go. Yes, of course.
It's all lumpy bumpy.
Yeah, but when I push down with this, it straightens it up.
What, and then you can tap it from the inside
I can
up?
tap it from inside up.
Okay.
A couple of tacks on, otherwise we have to have something on this side to knock against.
Yeah.
You're just making it even more ripply.
Yeah, and then we can put a piece of wood in on the outside and knock from the inside up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, when you push that in, it pulls it all nice and tight.
Yeah. If the camera work is awful, I'm the camera now. Blah, ha, 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 ha. Sorry.
What we'll do, right, when we strip the car down, before we paint it, I'll go around and we'll do loads of body working on the chassis.
Yeah, definitely. It's like these bits of seam sealer and stuff like that. I want to sand those back. And there's just in a few places where we've put seam sealer and we haven't been able to get to or whatever, or it was just awkward. There's a few.
Yeah, so
rough edges,
basic we'll body work the chassis. We'll fine tune it. We'll any tiny little bits that need doing. We'll redo them. Yeah. And then it's finished paint, and the chassis will be then as good as the bodywork.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got the top mount for the steering rack to do as well. Yeah.
Yeah. There's loads of little bits. We need to fabricate the.
I've got it here. I need to keep it together.
Dad made this off camera.
Yeah, it's just part of the top of the steering column, and obviously that goes into there. So that needs welding in there. I can drill that, and it all bolts through together. Makes the column then super stiff.
Not that it isn't already being attached to a,
Yeah, I know, but
a
it's,
roll cage tube. But the thing is, the stiffer it all is, the better steering feel you'll get as well.
yeah. We need to drill. Also need to drill it
Yeah.
and dimple dye it. That way we can paint inside through the dimple dye. Yep. So all this work is in it of just to get that fitting, so you can never catch your toes on it inside the car. Yeah, crazy amount of work just for a tiny little thing. We could have put it in the side here, but then it would have meant the hoses would have to be longer.
And we aren't sure that we don't want to route the tubes for these up through here.
Yeah.
Or up through there. We want to keep our options open. And obviously, you've already got a line running down to the brake caliper. And so if you have 3 coming up through here to these, and this coming through there, it's going to get very, very busy very, very fast.
And we need, like I said, as we said earlier, we want to be able to get to everything. We're having to strip loads of things off. So if you do need to do a brake job or replace anything, you can actually do it without having to pull, spend 6 hours pulling a whole car apart just to replace something that takes 5 minutes to replace.
And we didn't put the fitting just on top because our safety spare lives here, and the last thing that you want to do is when you put in your safety spare into inadvertently clonk a fitting. Everything needs to be tucked out of the way so you can't catch stuff.
We've got tons of clearance, nothing can chafe. And that runs round, because obviously we need to run the hoses from here down, round, along this edge, and round there, and to this point here. I've got a piece of hose. So you pass us some hose out at box way.
Yeah, there's a small vent. That will fit them down in this edge because
Round it then there.
Yeah, because our fuel tank has to be able to obviously come in and out. You made this excellent point yesterday, and so this is a shape that our fuel tank won't be able to do, is it?
Yeah, because if you made it that shape, you never fit it or get it out.
You won't be able to get it down this edge, yeah? And the benefit of being able to get it down this edge is greater than being able to get it in these corners. And so we'll leave it out of these corners, and then the brake lines can run along down and along this bottom edge. Also, we don't have a banjo fitting for that, do we?
No, we need 4. What's the back ones? Back ones aren't banjos, are they?
The back ones can be banjos, but we don't have the bolt. There, did it? You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, right, last week somebody asked a question about brake proportioning and why we've gone for a twin master cylinder setup rather than a brake proportioning valve. Okay, a brake proportioning valve is for basically sending a bigger proportion of your braking to the front. So if you've got a single master cylinder setup and you've put sticky tyres on the front, or for example, a Lancia Beta Monte Carlo, where they commonly lock up the rears, yeah? You can put a brake proportioning valve on your back brakes, and it's a restrictor, and that restricts the amount of brake pressure that can run to your back brakes, giving you more front brakes. That's okay on a car where you've got like a set amount of weight, you've got a set amount of tyre, you've got a set amount of, yeah, and you're just putting like a grippier tyre on. Yeah. That's fine. It's a minor adjustment. We have not that. we have a massive amount of difference between what the car originally, like what the braking components originally dealt with and the life they have now. So for example, our front calipers are from a 1.8 litre MX-5. Now you might look at it and think, well, a 1.8 litre MX-5 only weighs about, what, 950 kilos?
Yeah, something like that.
930, 950, something like that. But, and this will weigh 620, so that's not a massive difference, but an MX-5 has a 4-cylinder cast iron lump in the front, like the centre of, even though the weight balance might be similar, the centre of mass certainly isn't. And so we've got a lot less brakes on the, well, we require a lot less brakes on the front in theory than an MX-5, yeah?
Yep.
Because you're not trying to stop that big heavy lump at the front of the car.
Plus, well, and you don't get the same amount of weight transfer. Obviously, if you've got a big heavy lump here, you put your brakes on, that engine literally wants to push itself into the floor.
Yeah, because it's trying to go straight, it
trying
can't
to go
go straight. And so it rotates down with the suspension geometry. Whereas our anti-dive, anti-squat, and all that of our suspension's different. Our rear brakes come from a base model Civic from the early 2000s. And obviously that's a front engine, front wheel drive car and doesn't have much going on at the back at all as far as brake requirements. Not only that, we are running similar diameters and similar wheel sizes to those cars. Base model Civic came with a 14-inch wheel and a base model MX-5 NA came 1.8 came with 14-inch wheels. But we have this, and this is the great advantage of Mosquito over something like a Z-Cars Mini. If we want to, we can run up to like a 235 rear tyre on a 15-inch wheel.
On a 15, or even possibly even on a 16, but
no, not a 16.
No.
That'd be a bit much. It'd look like a Hot Wheels car. But yeah, you'd have to run a really low profile.
Yeah, and then
no, I'd never run less than 50% sidewall. It's not a good idea. But we can run as big as a 15-inch wheel with 235 on the back. And we can run as small as a 13 on the front and a 205 or even maybe slightly wider. And so if we change our wheel and tyre setup, we can actually change our braking setup to suit. We aren't restricted in any way with our brakes and with our brake biases, and that's the beautiful thing about our twin master cylinder setup. There's a reason why any sort of proper professional racing car is using a twin master cylinder setup, yeah?
Yep.
So that's your answer for that. A brake proportioning valve is to proportion what you've got in a known quantity in a known car with kind of reasonably known wheel diameters and stuff like that, and obviously your weight distribution and your centre of mass, whereas this is all unknown because it's one of one.
Yeah, it's not just that. If you actually change, if you put massive big Brembo brakes on your car, maybe 6-pot calipers, and you've got massive Brembo brakes or any other brake, AP or whatever, and you don't match the wheel cylinder with the brakes, because obviously a big caliper...
Your brake master cylinder with your brake caliper.
Yeah, your brake caliper then needs an awful lot more fluid, because it's a bigger caliper, to push the pistons, right? So then you need a bigger master cylinder that pushes more fluid, otherwise you end up with a really long pedal travel before the brakes start to bite. And also with a bigger master cylinder, the line pressure is less.
Yeah.
So you actually need to push the brakes harder. And obviously if the servo assisted, that's not a big problem. But if you've no servo and you've got massive big front brakes and a massive wheel cylinder, master cylinder, you need to be able to push that pedal really hard.
So you might need much greater leverages, and that's a pedal box design issue then.
Yeah, and then not only that, it affects the firewall that the pedal box is actually mounted to. If it's a above hinge pedal box.
Yeah, MX-5s, they actually do a reinforcement for your firewall that attaches the brake master cylinder to the suspension mount for the shock absorbers.
Yeah, and it's not just as cut and dried and as easy as you initially think.
Because your firewall flexes.
And the whole thing about brakes is it's all about heat management, right? Obviously, you turn in a rotational movement of your wheel. You're clamping that wheel with brake pads. So using friction, and friction produces a huge amount of heat. And you can actually over-brake a car. You can put brakes on that are too big.
I will say, right, that it happened when we did this. Everyone goes instantly, oh, what you need is some massive big 4 or 6 pot aluminium calipers and all the rest of it. It's the second you need any sort of brake upgrade. It's amazing what pads, fluid and braided brake lines can do for a car. In fact, the Techno Pro Spirit MRS that set the best motoring Gunside Toge thing, that was on standard, just standard calipers for a Toyota MR2. There's loads of rally cars that have done amazing things with standard brakes in there.
Yeah, but it's just about getting rid of that heat.
And so it's a wonderful thing. If you've got a standard car, if you've got any sort of factory car, there's loads of people you can consult, and I would advise anytime anything to do with brakes, get in touch with a specialist and see what the specialist advises for your application and for the tyres you're running and your wheel diameters and all that kind of thing. A specialist, not just a salesman, but a specialist will be able to tell you exactly what you need and how to run it and whatever. Don't just look at a YouTuber who's put a big brake kit on their car and go, oh, they did that, so I need that.
Yeah.
It's really important that you get in touch with a specialist. Brakes are the most important. Your brakes and your tyres are the most important thing on your car.
Because it's the only thing that touches the road.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, brake horsepower don't keep you alive.
No.
But your brakes do. But yeah, with a factory car, there's loads of information out there, and I'm sure you can look it up and get really good advice from a specialist. With this, we are the factory, and so the more tunable and the more kind of fine tunable and
basically
adjustable we can make it, the better. We don't have the Colin Chapman issue of if you make it adjustable, they will adjust it wrong, because after all, we're the ones adjusting it. But as far as like tyres, we don't know what our final tyre choice is going to be, because if we went for something super sticky, we might not be able to keep heat in them. Because the car is so lightweight and they are quite a large tyre as is, especially on the front. And brake pads are the same. Like if we went for some kind of aggressive brake pad, we probably wouldn't be able to keep it warm enough to be effective, because at road legal speeds, you can pretty much go around any corner in this without touching your brakes. And if that's not the case, then we've done something wrong. So that answers the age-old question of how long does it take two Englishmen to run a brake line that long? Apparently 1.5 days. But it was a quite involved running one.
It was, but it's all now super safe. There's no way that can be, your feet can touch it at all, you know, and that's a major safety concern. Is it can't be kicked, it can't be it's not going to chafe, it's going to be in its position, all happy.
Much like a gin and tonic, it's slimline.
Yes.
No, it is. It's slimline. It's out the way. Like I'm really happy with the solution that we've come up with because it wasn't an easy thing to figure out. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of you who've made it this far into the video. If you'd like to support us, then don't forget to click like or tell us what you think. Have you ever run brake lines on your car? What experiences have you got in this area?
Yeah, leave us a comment.
And if you can't think of anything, you can always just leave us a mosquito emoji, and that way we know you've made it to the end and you're a mosquito fan proper. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our Patreon members.
Yes, thank you guys. We can't thank you enough.
Yeah, you allow us to do all of this. YouTube isn't massively fussed about pushing this channel. Obviously, we are just here, we are niche, and we are happy to do that. But it helps us massively to have your support. And like Dad says, we can't do it without you.
Yep. So thank you very, very much.
It's huge. And the feedback from the community in the last couple of weeks especially has been astounding. So thank you all. Please be awesome to each other, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.